you get to be a refreshing moment sometimes. You get to be lucky enough to be a refreshing moment if you can enter that lexicon of the mainstream.
Right.
For a minute, and you don't dumb it down.
Yeah.
In fact, you amp it up.
Yeah.
Like some of the cover music, which was a fraction of our oeuvre out there in the world. It's some of the most out stuff we ever did.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
You know, when you hear our Heart of Glass, it's not like we're playing Heart of Glass and you're in a cocktail lounge.
Yeah.
It's fierce avant-garde music.
There's demonic moments.
There are, and it's a devotion to the avant-garde.
Yeah.
And it's just you utilize the fact that there's a strong melody and a strong theme, and then you can hang your hat on that and torture it.
Yeah.
That was our idea, was just hang on to the fact that at some point the theme of Heart of Glass is going to appear. But for the rest of the time, it's going to be bludgeoned, and we're going to find some other world inside Heart of Glass. And that was the idea.
Go. Let's go.
What is up, everybody? Welcome back to the show. Today's guest is one of my favorite drummers on the planet. He is the co-founder and drummer for the jazz trio, The Bad Plus. When I first discovered The Bad Plus in 2003, they immediately became one of my favorite jazz ensembles I'd ever heard in my life. I was already a jazz fan, but when I found them, they just opened up my love for jazz when I realized how jazz could sound. Like, they took it in so many new directions and sounded authentically them. So I'm very happy to have him on the show today. If you already are a Bad Plus fan, I hope you love this episode. We go deep with Dave on how the Bad Plus got together, their initial fame and success that came in the jazz world right after they released These Are the Vistas in 2003, an incredible album, their debut full length, which I highly recommend you go and listen to. What it felt like to them, what happened, how they named their songs, how they started doing all their covers that became such a big part of them. Their cover of FLIM by Aphex Twin, the cover of Smells Like Teen Spirit by Nirvana, the Blondie cover. They have so many incredible covers. Even they did Iron Man, Black Sabbath, and Geezer Butler told them it was his favorite cover that he's ever heard of Iron Man. And it's a jazz cover. So really, really, really incredible. And if you haven't heard the Bad Plus, or know Dave King, well, you're welcome, because you're about to love them. And if you're looking for one place to start in researching them, I recommend going to YouTube and watching the Bad Plus on Jools Holland, 3.5 minute epic performance, so dynamic. So without further ado, one of my favorite drummers in the world, really great guy, really funny guy. Please give it up for Dave King. Anyways, are you ready to jump in?
Absolutely.
All right, we're going in 3, 2, 1. That's how it works.
I watched your hand hit a lever of some side.
It's a
okay. There we go. All right.
I'm actually a DJ. That's how I make all the money.
It's a nice Lindrum you got there.
This is my new Lindrum. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the show. We have an incredible guest for you today. One of my favorite drummers in the world from one of my favorite jazz ensembles in the world, if not my favorite of all time. Let's go. Ladies and gentlemen, make a ton of noise for Dave King.
That's definitely the largest crowd I've ever played.
There's jazz festivals. God, they don't get that loud though.
Yeah.
It's more like thousands of.
Yeah. They get that. They get loud. I play the early set.
we're opening.
Yeah, exactly.
Just people on lawn chairs at that point.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Sailboat goes by. It's 11 a.m. People are waking up.
There's no front of house. Yeah. just playing, not mic'd.
Yeah,
Mics aren't on.
I own that world. That's my 11 a.m. set at Newport is my world.
You just say the Bad Plus, and then you start playing.
Yeah, exactly. The guy's on a boat going.
Well, dude, thanks for coming on the show.
Mm-hmm.
Love what you do, man.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely, bro. When I first heard These Are the Vistas in 2003, man, I heard it right when it came out. Mm-hmm. I was 19 years old. Your drum beat right at the stop. It really, man, it got me so excited about jazz. Like, I was raised, I have my mom's side of the family is a jazz family. Mm-hmm. Dad's side's rock and roll. Yep. So I'm kind of split between that.
Yeah.
So I always liked jazz. But I feel like when I heard the Bad Plus, I all of a sudden just like loved it. You guys showed me what jazz could be in this whole new way, especially your drumming is just so versatile and dynamic. I'm just blowing you up right now, bro. But
that's very sweet of you. I appreciate it.
But yeah, I've seen you play so many times, and I love what you do, man. You have successfully created your own sound, which is the hardest thing to do on an instrument.
I appreciate that. Thank you. I'm glad that it reached you. We were just playing what we were hearing. So thank you.
So I feel like you guys dropped that album, right? Or you had one album before and then you kind of came together a few years later and dropped that full length.
Right.
And then it really hit hard, right? Like you dropped this album and all of a sudden you're a prominent name like in the jazz world.
Yeah.
What did that feel like? What happened in that moment?
It's a tremendous to get to be able to explain that moment for anybody who cares, because, of course we didn't expect any response like that. I mean, we were believing what we were doing, and we had been playing for years. When that record, you were 19, but I was 32.
Yeah.
So we had already been in different things and working as side musicians with people and trying our own groups outside each other. Reed Anderson, Ethan Iverson, and I were the original band for 18 years. We grew up together. So then when throughout our entire 20s or in New York, or when I was out here in Los Angeles, we always kept playing with each other in different things. And when we decided to put the group together, it was just based on the fact that I'd be in New York playing, and we would I'll be talking about, maybe we should come back together and form something really band-like. In jazz, there are so few bands with an identity. You have Weather Report or, Medeski, Martin and Wood. There are these band identities, but there aren't many.
Yeah.
And especially a piano trio has a certain space in the jazz canon. Yeah. That's usually leader centric. The Bill Evans or
for sure.
Keith Jarrett or Oscar, or whoever. And Ahmad Jamal would be a huge one for us.
Absolutely.
And so we decided, it wasn't that it was a piano, bass, and drums. It was more like, it was just the three people, those personalities, and our history growing up. And when we put the thing together, we felt like we had a real, like it was a different thing happening. That thing we were talking about earlier, like something magic can happen. Yeah. Talking about the J.R. Robinson. Phil in Rock With You, but something that you're not thinking about. You're not sitting there going, what if we decide we're going to play an Aphex twin tune along with a bunch of originals? It just happened really original, naturally, I should say. And we made a small record with a Spanish label called Fresh Sound New Talent. It was a label that was kind of like releasing some lesser known people in the Brooklyn kind of scene of the early 2000s. Yeah. Which we were sort of a part of. And Reed had released a few records on that label, and Ethan had, this is a long answer, but this leads to why we didn't think anything, and we made this record, a little small record that started to catch the ears of some jazz critics. We'd been known in the sort of smaller pockets of like our generation, like Kurt Rosenwinkel, Mark Turner, people that were sort of percolating the sort of post Brad Meldau wave of like people our age that were in our 20s, and we were kind of making some interesting music here and there. And we that record kind of got some critical attention, and so we were able to get somehow a deal with Columbia Jazz. Yeah. Because there's a great guy there named Yves Beauvais who was running the label. He's a very legendary kind of like I suppose an artist development person for creative music, and he's been around. He had been around a long time, and he heard us do. He came to a show of ours in New York, and he was like, "This band's being talked about. This sort of like different way of approaching the piano trio." Yeah, which is really how the door opened. Yeah, it was natural for us to just come together and just be ourselves. We weren't saying, there was no pleasing a leader. Right. There was no. It was just three kind of iconoclastic thinking people, whether or not we were ignorant to what would go over, or like we're unhirable on some level. It's like you become less professionally hireable when you decide to just play how you want to play. Yes. and that freedom has always kind of been inside the three of us.
Wow.
That way of approaching the music was always like, we'd rather be more personal about it than be hireable.
For sure.
And so we made this record, and it was I had the great engineer Chad Blake, which a lot of people know was in Los Angeles for many years, doing mostly rock stuff. He's got really another very unique, brilliant sound to his records, and never really did jazz records. And I knew that he had worked with a project. He's in a project called the Latin Playboys, which was the guys from Los Lobos, David Hidalgo, whatever. And they made these records that were really interesting. And so Yves Beauvais, long story short, the same guy who signed us is the guy who worked with Latin Playboys, which was with Chad Blake. And so I said, we were talking about engineers for our album. This is back when there was a record industry. Like even if it was jazz, it's a tiny amount of money versus rock. Still, there was a little bit of capital there to be able to be like, what studio would you guys like to do this thing? And we're like, we're on Columbia, we signed this Columbia deal. We're like, wow, we're gonna make a record on Columbia Records and jazz, but it's you're used to being sort of like, well, this music is always sort of marginalized in the world. It's not like you're thinking, get ready because it's gonna
we're gonna be famous.
Yeah,
in
exactly.
The jazz
You're
world.
just sort of like, we've been grinding for years. At this point. I mean, 10, 12 years of just nonstop grinding of wherever you can play, and playing jazz brunches and, working as side people and releasing tiny little independent CDs and doing whatever. And so I just said, hey, this is a long shot, but since you're connected to Chad Blake, talking to Yves Beauvais, could you send him our music and just on a whim, just to see if that's possible? To work with Chad Blake. This is like, works with, Tom Waits and all these people. And I just thought that'd be so interesting to get a different view of sonically of how to go about this. And Eve said, oh, okay, we'll send him the stuff. And, we couldn't believe it. He wrote back like, I really love these guys. He was really knocked out by what we were doing. Yeah. And he said, I'd love to do the record. Wow. And he was finishing a Peter Gabriel album. And all of a sudden we're like, he was running Real World Studios, basically, in Peter Gabriel's studio in England.
Crazy studio.
Exactly. Yeah, and all of a sudden we're on a plane to England. We're going to make the record there. And of course,
made it there?
Exactly.
I didn't even know that.
Oh yeah, we made 3 of them there.
Wow.
The 3 Columbia records are all at Real World. And of course, for us, it's like rock bands have like months and whatever. For us, it's like 2 days.
2 days, yeah, for sure.
And we're like, we're going to England for 2 days. Let's get it,
We're gonna get 2 or 3 days for 2 hours.
Exactly. Yeah. And we rolled in, and this is to make these the Vistas, and we were just that's of course crazy to consider that they even got us plane tickets.
Yeah.
And we land there and we meet Chad, and it's like, for me, it's just like I'm meeting one of the great heroes of engineering and producing, and he's into creative. He's a totally creative thinker. Changed the game in many ways of making records with this sort of outsider art mentality. And it's perfect for us because that's what we've always considered ourselves. We were never thinking that it could inhabit other than a small pocket of the world of music. And so we're rolling with it.
Yeah.
No expectations, just to make our music in a great record. And that first album, These Vistas, which is the one that kind of blew that door open, is mostly first takes. There's no edits, no nothing. And we just knocked it out. We were like ready. It's almost like when you've been underground for so long and just the door cracks open a little, you're just like, you can't believe you can see a sliver of light.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You're like,
you're
like in solitary confinement. Art solitary confinement.
I'll take that little bit.
It's like somebody's like pushing a dinner tray towards you. You're like, and it's like, for once, it's like food. Other than like
slosh.
A slosh of malto meal or whatever. And so I had an older brother in prison, so I can make prison jokes.
Okay.
So in fact, he still might be there. And so the light cracked in, and we just were ready.
Wow.
And Chad, it was like a magical combination of thinking, we were ready. We could play. We had an idea and we do whatever, and we just knocked it out in I think we tracked it only in like 1.5 days. And then Chad just started mixing right there. And we went back with this album and I had this art idea of this painting that I had seen in New Orleans because I'm really into visual art and have been. I'm usually the guy designing the album stuff. So that's why I liked your logo, Jamcar. I thought it's actually a really beautiful logo you guys have.
It means a lot. Thank you.
And so I was like, we had this whole idea, and it's like this painting. If you remember what it is, it's just this very. Our name isn't on the front.
Yeah.
All these things that people don't do in jazz.
Yeah. All the things of what not to do.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's like they're just like, oh, you guys. I'm like, just don't put the name. Put it on the spine.
Yeah.
And luckily, we had this beautiful guy, Yves Beauvais, who became a mentor and a great friend of mine, who just said, yeah, just do what they're saying.
Yeah.
Like he believed that we had a vision instead of just guys that can just play.
Yeah.
And the vision was that our vision had to do with like reframing the best we could what people thought a piano trio could be.
Yeah.
Maybe a piano trio could have the dynamic range of like Sonic Youth as well as like the learned nature of a jazz musician.
Yeah.
So the three of us came up playing jazz. We came up playing straight ahead stuff, came up playing, moved into the 60s kind of modal world. We're from all schools of jazz, free music. And then also Reed and I had a background just as kids. It's like, just kids growing up that playing other music, rock music, R&B music. It's just being products of the environment of our generation.
Yeah. And
instead of ignoring those things, we embraced those things.
Yeah.
Instead of feeling like you needed to I never checked out any rock stuff. It's more like, no, we did. And the Police were an important band to us. The Led Zeppelin was an important band to us. And so was John Coltrane.
Yeah.
And so was electronic music. And so is classical music. Very important to us. Brahms is important to us.
Yeah.
And we're like, you know what? We're just gonna. People talk about letting it all in, but we're just going to let it all in and make a sound.
Yeah.
And when we made that album and it came out, there was no expectation of us. There wasn't some massive push at the Bad Plus. The push happened very organically.
Wow.
Like it's not like Columbia Records was thinking we were gonna be this thing. And it was like, of course they promoted it, but it wasn't, it had no promotion budget. We didn't even have a booking agent really willing to work with us.
That's crazy.
Yeah. So when it hit, I'm sorry if this is a long answer.
No, it's
but
great.
When
this is the answer.
When it started to hit, when it came out, it was like people started talking about it and started talking about it outside jazz circles. And in jazz circles, it was being talked about. It had a very impactful, like you said, that fill at the beginning of this tune, Big Eater. It had an impactful entry because it sounded different as well.
Immediately.
It wasn't just what we were doing. It's mostly original music, and we were, of course, being talked about for our takes on some non original music on that record, Aphex Twin, a jazz group playing Blondie, Heart of Glass.
Nirvana.
It really wasn't in Nirvana. People weren't really talking about. They were playing more of that classic kind of like thing where people were taking more harmonically rich music, like the Beatles or whoever, or Bjork or Radiohead or whatever. And with all due respect, like Brad doing amazing Radiohead, Brad Meldau doing amazing. We were doing things you wouldn't think so much like.
For sure.
Like, people are thinking about playing a Pixies tune.
Yeah.
And and then we were doing things like not reharmonizing in a way that you would consider, we're gonna play this like Joni Mitchell, or we're not gonna reharm it into a jazz harmonic tradition.
Yeah,
we're gonna think of it more of a tradition of either modal or Stravinsky, or something where there was a way to meet it on its own terms.
Yeah,
instead of putting some Bill Evans harmony on "Smells Like Teen Spirit," to us that was like an easy conclusion. And for us, it's more like Ethan going, let's just play the fifths like it's a bar chord.
Yeah.
And just be able to have that tapestry be able to stretch out harmonically. Yeah. Like instead of us being tied to a certain harmonic structure or a certain clave, a swinging thing or whatever. For sure. Even though that is a swing thing in Teen Spirit.
Yeah.
But Aphex Twin, no one was thinking in 2001, 2002 about playing. I'm not saying nobody, but I mean, we were like, going in on this stuff.
Nobody
like,
was. It was just you.
Yeah,
When I heard that, it was like, no one is doing this.
Yeah,
like,
no one's playing the Aphex Twin as an acoustic trio, and we're not doing just an impression of electronic music.
Right, exactly.
It was a way that humans would be playing it in a piano trio.
Yes.
And
so simple on the piano.
Exactly.
So
no
simple
improvising.
playing the melody.
Yeah, it's a drum feature.
And then it's a drum feature just going off. And then you playing drums in a way that I had never heard, where the way you do the I don't even know how to explain your rolls, like these buzz rolls that are like just super versatile and like kind of sound like they have effects on them, but they don't, obviously.
Yeah, no, they didn't. And it was just, and also just interpreting it, it was almost like, well, do we want to do an interpretation of these sort of breakbeat drum rush things that they fix in, or are we going to just play it a little bit more like, there's also, we're jazz musicians.
Yeah.
We're coming from other traditions of improvising. We're coming from other traditions of the way you would play a beat or a swing thing or whatever. And it's all kind of loaded in there. Is like, one thing was, we never wanted to feel like we were doing an impression or some sort of cafeteria version of like the music. Like, and there's a rock thing, and there's a jazz thing, and there's a Latin jazz thing. And it was more like we're just playing it. Yeah. We had less agenda. And it just ended up having an impact. Yeah. We were in Rolling Stone. We weren't sitting there thinking, like expecting anything. Yeah. And so it was, to answer a long answer of your question, it was not only like, of course, a beautiful feeling, but also a scary feeling that, people start saying things like, the future of jazz and the future of whatever. And we're like, whoa, we never claimed that we were anything other than ourselves. Yeah. And we were never claimed to be a position. Like, we play this way because we don't like straight ahead stuff, or we don't like swinging.
You love it all. Yeah.
Of course. It's like, we would laugh at the moments we would be criticized, which was classic. If you're built up, somebody's got to take you down. We would kind of laugh at this idea, like, we don't swing or we don't know jazz harmony. Meanwhile, it's like, come on now.
Pay attention.
Yeah, come on now. Be a little bit more sensitive.
That's probably just because you're crashing a ride. Exactly. And they're like, what is that?
Dave King plays so loud, and then people see us live, and we're playing totally all over the place dynamically. We're not just sit down and bash this idea
do that
that
in
we
a single song.
Exactly. It's like we're playing at Whispers, we're playing the Village Vanguard, it's a very large dynamic range. I'll give you that. And the records sound big because that's a rock producer.
Yeah. Which is so cool, man.
Yeah. And so, but it's like, come on, it's a little bit more complex emotion than that. Yeah. And
complex emotion.
Yeah, that's the new. Yeah, we finally made that record. Exactly. Anyway, long story short, we were very surprised, and we were lucky to continue and push through that sort of sophomore, like under the guise of like, we have to be pressured to either feel like we've changed the music, or we always believed we were doing something. Yeah. And we stuck with that, and we got on the road and just, road band, just like built the audience. Man. So we did it old school in that way.
Because like, when These Are the Vistas first came out, so I'm sure there's a lot of Bad Plus fans listening, so you know exactly what I'm talking about. And if not, you're welcome, because you now know the Bad Plus. So go to These Are the Vistas, start early, and like Big Eater comes on, your drum beat. As a drummer, I'm like, what is that? What is that beat? And then the piano comes in with the bass, and you're like, what is that? And then the dun, 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 and then the weird jump beat. I don't even know what count you're doing, but it's so tasteful. It's not like intentional, like, let's make something technical. It's like, it's very cinematic. You guys play very cinematically. Like, it's like you're just, it's such visual music. They're so dynamic, and it goes so many places. And then you get to the Smells Like Teen Spirit cover, and you're like, what? And then you do it in your way, which, of course, listen to it if you don't. And then the FLIM cover of Aphex Twin, just like, that really put you guys on the map, right? People stuck to that when that came out. Was that kind of like the...
Yeah, it was like a combination of, when we in the press, some people really started to lock in on these interpretations of some things that we were doing, especially Aphex Twin, because that wasn't source material for jazz musicians at that point.
Yeah, a lot of people probably discovered even Aphex Twin from it.
Maybe, right? Hopefully,
of jazz people at least.
Yeah, in fact, we ended up meeting Richard D. James at a festival in Spain, and he told us he really loved. There's been a few times when we've gotten to meet some of the people we've done their music And of course, we've always been predominantly an original band. Like when you're putting in their band, it's like, what's the other idea? What, jazz musicians, there is no such thing as cover music. You know, the whole thing is, the standard material is whatever. It's in rock music, you think of the cover song as some sort of like, oh, you play a wedding, you play a cover song. In jazz, it's like wide open material to use. It's a structure to improvise. Original. Yeah. We were like, well, we could either do the song as you and all the things you are, or we could look at some other music. Yeah. And it's not like we were the first people, Miles Davis, John Coltrane, whoever, that were playing pop music. Yeah. And then, jazz musicians, Brad Meldau playing Radiohead or doing whatever. It was just the way we approached it was different. Yeah. And it had an impact. And so, yes, people talked about the Aphex Twin thing, but it was really nice that also a lot of great jazz critics and a lot of even straight ahead jazz critics that you would think wouldn't dig us were super into it and giving us props as musicians. And, absolutely. And as like, wait a minute, these guys actually, it's more, there's a lot going on there. It's For not, sure. It's not three jazz guys that are playing Aphex Twin. For sure. And so it balanced out over a few years the more perspective of the press. Like at first it's sort of like, oh, it's this jazz trio that plays Aphex Twin and Nirvana tune and whatever, but it's 10 tunes and 7 of them are originals. Exactly. There's 3 and composers. The originals are incredible, so it's not like you're leaning on the covers or there's no gimmick there. It's really just your guys' sound. It's really, when you watch the three of you at the time, 3 completely unique individuals that are almost like visually also from like different parts or different scenes of the world. Exactly. And then you're playing in a way, you look different than a normal jazz drummer that's playing in a jazz club, and you got tattoos, and you're just like, and you're playing with toys, which I want to get to. Yeah, you're doing all this stuff, and I'll have shorter answers. It's sorry. So unique. It's so unique and captivating, man. So thank you. Wait, so when you met Aphex Twin, what did he say about FLIM? It was so fun. We were playing a festival in Spain, and we were just waiting to get picked up. And it happened to be a festival that had, some jazz stuff, but also some rock stuff. And I was excited because I love the band Yo La Tengo, and they were like riding with us in the van. And so again, we were sort of like, not a lot of jazz guys, I assume, knew who Yo La Tengo was. And I was in the van going, Ethan didn't care. Ethan barely knew, Ethan didn't know who Nirvana was. That's what the best part about the beginning of the band is. We were deciding tunes, and he didn't know any of it. He was just straight jazz. He didn't even listen to. He had to literally be told, like, oh, Nirvana, because we were trying to think of other music. Wow. Anyway, so Aphex Twin was just like, he's just fine, whatever. That's why the approach is just like, he's hearing it as a song. He's not thinking about it as, oh, it's electronic music or anything. Yeah. And so I wouldn't have recognized Richard James because, I mean, he's not pictured anywhere unless he's doctored or whatever. For sure. And he was doing a set at the I didn't even know he did live stuff, and he was doing occasionally. Very occasionally. And Reed was a huge fan. Still is a huge. I love him too, but Reed was like Aphex Twin was his sort of like outside jazz, because of course Reed is just came out of the jazz world and came out of he's classical. He went to Curtis Institute in Philadelphia, graduate of that's the most the prestigious classical music conservatory in the world. Yeah. So all these things where Aphex Twin he locked in on, and we're standing there, and he just looked over. There's like a bar area of the hotel, and he's like, he looked over, and Richard D. James was standing at the bar by himself. Nobody recognized him. He's just there, and Reed is like, that's Aphex Twin. That's Richard D. James. I know it. And I was like, that is, he's standing over there. And we just said, we gotta say hi. We gotta go over and just even see if he was receptive. Maybe he's upset about what we did. And we went over and introduced ourselves, and it was just a great starstruck moment for Reed. It was really fun. It was cute to see Reed just sort of like, just Christmas morning, Reed Anderson, like he's meeting Aphex Twin. And Richard G. James was like, oh, I totally know who you guys are, and I really, really appreciate what you did. I've listened to a couple live versions and the album version. He's tremendous, and it was such a beautiful, it was a heartwarming moment for us to feel like we had honored the tune. And that's awesome. Happened a couple times. It happened to us with Pixies. Wow. Where they ended up asking us to open a few shows, which we did. So cool. it happens every now and again where we would hear from somebody that liked what we did.
Yeah.
With the few things we did, including the classical music. When we heard from, we did a Milton Babbitt piece, the great 20th century composer Milton Babbitt, and before he died, his daughter came to see us. We were playing at Yale, and his daughter came and said that he had appreciated this thing we did. We did a piece of his called Semi-Simple Variations, a very complex piece of music.
Yeah.
And it's on a record of ours called For All I Care, where we did some classical music. We did the Rite of Spring. We did Ligeti.
Did the entire Rite of Spring.
Yeah.
Which
So
we'll get to as well.
yeah. So we've dealt with the classical music world as well on this certain level, and we got some respect from the classical music world, which was really important to us. But hearing from Milton Babbitt was just as important as hearing from Richard James.
Wow.
That's what I mean about this idea that there was no hierarchical thinking,
right?
Which led to freedom.
Yes.
You know, it led
Pure
to
freedom.
It led to not feeling like just because Black Sabbath was this rock band, you know, that you shouldn't take that as seriously as John Coltrane. In those genres, they are equal. And that led to, you know, Geezer Butler of Black Sabbath came to see us in Los Angeles.
Wow.
That was a huge one. Him saying that our cover of Iron Man was his favorite Black Sabbath cover he'd ever heard.
That's so cool.
And so we were sitting there like, this is tremendous. Like the bassist of Black Sabbath is telling us that, and he wrote it.
Yeah. That's so
He and Ozzy Osbourne wrote Iron Man.
That's so cool.
So we were like, man, he's hearing that we were taking it dead seriously, because we were.
Yeah.
It wasn't, for us, it wasn't as simple as an ironic statement.
Yeah.
For us, it was source material.
And you guys covering Iron Man and stuff is the darkest jazz thing to ever happen.
and we've thought so too. It's like still one of our favorite things we ever did.
Good,
and
dude.
Ethan, who didn't even know who Black Sabbath was, he to him it's his favorite thing. I think he thinks that's the best thing we ever did, including all the original music we all wrote.
Wow.
Because each of us are composers as well, so we would bring in a coterie. Each one brings in pieces, and we would make them happen. And Ethan still thinks, I know to this day, he talks about Black Sabbath. He said, man, he put on Iron Man. It's just, you're not going to hear that from a piano trio.
Go listen to the Bad Plus cover of Iron Man. Geezer Butler's favorite cover of Iron Man of all time.
It was true. He said it. It was a true thing. It happened out here.
That's such an LA thing too.
It is. And to have him show up, I was just like, I think that's Geezer Butler. And he came backstage and was, he was a sweet guy, by the way. Really nice dude.
That's awesome. Jools Holland performance. I remember when that came out too, when I saw it for the first time, I was just like, oh my God. So go watch the Jools Holland performance. What was that like for you? That must have been incredible. And oh God, it's the most like ferocious jazz TV performance I think ever.
Well, thank you. Yeah, that was also another one of these whirlwind things of I think we were even on our third record for Columbia, this record called Suspicious Activity. And we were, or it might have been Give, the second record.
Yeah. That track's on Give.
Yeah, that's on Give. And we were being asked to, you know, like, if you wanted to be on Jools Holland, he's in, you know, that they're interested in having you. We were like, oh my gosh, yeah. And remember watching Night Music, the great show, and the American television show that Jools Holland was a co-host of, and knowing his work with, you know, Squeeze and everything like that. And we were very excited to do it. That's actually where we met the Pixies.
Wow.
Not on the show, but we were staying in the same hotel as the Pixies, because we were on tour, and then we're in London to do the thing.
Yeah.
And we're just this weird jazz band doing this show with all these rock bands. The Killers were on there, and Tom Jones was actually on the same episode as us. We were so excited to meet Tom Jones.
That's cool.
So,
but we
were like, again, just like ushered in to play our music on TV and the show, and we just play it one take, and you're doing this thing. But we met the Pixies in the hotel lobby. I was like, that's Kim Deal, the Pixies right there. And we were talking to her, and she said, yeah, you guys did, you're the jazz group that did our song Valoria. They knew exactly what it was. And I remember her saying to us, she didn't know jazz guys liked them.
Yeah.
And I thought that was the funniest thing to say. She's like, I didn't know jazz guys liked us. And I'm like, oh my God, I'm a huge fan, you know, and you know, you're one of the great rock bands of all time, and why wouldn't we like you? You know, we get a few weeks later, their manager contacted our manager and asked if we wanted to open some of the shows on their reunion tour, and it was incredible. It was just
so
like
cool.
And they usher out this weird piano trio in front of 10,000 people, and you know, we're thinking, you know, it's just like. But I mean, we're opening for the Pixies. You know, who cares that the audience is like, yeah, enough
What
of this.
is this?
Whatever this is, enough. It's actually incredible. The first time we did it, we were in Canada, and we had this tremendous response. We were in Vancouver. I'll never forget it. And we're opening for the Pixies. There's at least 10,000 people.
Yeah.
And we're like, is this going to even translate? You
For
know,
a jazz trio to do that.
Yeah, and we're just hitting, just like going for it. And it went over really well. It was like people were like, and we didn't realize that maybe that was like nice people in Canada response.
They're just being polite.
like these Canadians are so nice, and then, but it was like a tremendous audience response.
Yeah.
And we were all excited, and Pixies was saying to us, hell yeah, Bad Plus, that they love you, like Kim Deal saying, whatever. And then the next one was in Chicago. And it was literally like we went up thinking, yeah, we made an impact. And we were playing the Armory in Chicago with them. And it was, whatever that is, 5,000 people. And we sounded like, it was like people, we heard this is the clap. Have you ever seen 5,000 people not react to something?
Total claps.
Imagine how abstract that is. It's a sea of people looking at you like this, or talking and drinking
over it.
They're just like we're just this mice running around like on aluminum siding. That's what we sounded like. It was brutal, and we just kind of slithered
Even
back
if you're-
down into the jazz world of very small audience next to rock guys.
Play Iron Man again.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
We were like, should we play Valoria? Our version of the Pixies. Just like, maybe not tonight.
Maybe not tonight.
Anyway.
Like, oh, that's why these guys are here. Is this a test?
Yeah, exactly. That could have been like the vibe, right? Like, I guess the Pixies like these guys,
Pixies experiment.
Exactly.
Man, that's great. What have been some of the greatest shows?
What's that?
What have been some of the greatest shows?
Hey, I mean, I was such a fan of theirs, of Pixies, that I just was I couldn't believe they were having us do that. But then you realize, well, I mean, the Pixies were an iconic art band.
Yeah.
And so to me, it made perfect sense that they would want something that isn't just a normal thing. We ended up, I don't know if you knew this, but we were the only jazz group to ever appear on Conan O'Brien.
Whoa, I did not know that.
We were on Conan O'Brien, and he said the same thing to us. Like we played one of my tunes on Conan O'Brien, a tune called Thrift Store Jewelry,
Nice.
off of our record Prague,
Mm-hmm.
and he didn't know. We were playing the Blue Note all week, and he held up our record there at the Blue Note all week in New York, and whatever. This is years into our thing. It's like 2008, and we couldn't believe it. I mean, think about that. When we were called to do Conan O'Brien, we were like, we're gonna play our song Conan O'Brien. It's still this thing.
Yeah.
I'm sure Elmo. It's like you still like looking in the rearview mirror, like, when are they gonna stop? You know what I mean? It's like when are they gonna figure out that we don't sell records, that we're not even remotely as big as this press thing seems like we are?
Come
and
on.
No, but it's true. In the jazz, there's a ceiling to this music.
Yes.
And the great icons of this music, that there is a ceiling to the certain kind of like amount of exposure and the amount of exposure in audience. Like, you're building this audience, you're doing this great thing with this podcast and this system that you have, the Jam Card thing. It's like it's a brilliant idea to build a community and to build an appreciation for something.
Yeah.
And when you're outside the spectrum of the constant push in the culture of something pop and something, like easier conclusion or something that's more viscerally attached to you only, you're asking a lot of an audience's attention span to take in this information. And so in a way, you just can't believe you're getting, when you spend years not being paid attention to at all, you just can't believe they're still paying attention to you.
Right.
And you got to stay in there and we just have this core audience of really mainly just jazz heads or people that got into jazz through the lens of an Aphex Twin cover. That's great. A lot of people got into jazz because they were playing standards,
Right.
They're playing show tunes. You're playing music, songs from musicals. John Coltrane playing My Favorite Things.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a huge. These are ways that people attach themselves to the themes of the music. So for us, it was just to get to be asked to do something like that, and to be asked to play an original piece. And Conan said to us, he said, thank you. He thanked us. He was really positive about it because he hadn't listened to us ever.
Yeah.
And we played the tune and he was like, what the hell was that? And of course, we're such fans of Conan O'Brien.
Yeah.
And he was like, he literally looked at me. He's like, whoa, you see it on camera.
Yeah.
If you watch the clip, he just is like, wow, And then he said to us afterwards, he said, thank you for not being another rock band that has played this show. And Conan O'Brien plays guitar, and he's just like, he was wondering what time signatures the tune was in that we were playing.
Yeah.
And we're like, well, it's many,
Yeah.
It's not just one, Conan. Come on,
This
man.
isn't rock.
Yeah,
Conan.
exactly. Conan, it's not Rush.
Yeah.
This isn't just in 7, okay? and
That's simple music.
Exactly, Conan. And so, but he was really saying thank you for being something other than what we would have every night.
Yeah, oh my God, probably
And
super refreshing for
It's
him.
tired of a super refreshing
Yeah.
moment for him. And that's kind of how we inhabit the world of you get to be a refreshing moment sometimes. You get to be lucky enough to be a refreshing moment if you can enter that lexicon of the mainstream
Right.
for a minute and you don't dumb it down.
Yeah.
In fact, you amp it up.
Yeah.
Like some of the cover music, which was a fraction of our oeuvre out there in the world. It's some of the most out stuff we ever did.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
When you hear our Heart of Glass, it's not like we're playing Heart of Glass
Yeah.
and you're in a cocktail lounge.
Yeah.
It's fierce avant-garde
Yeah.
music.
There's demonic moments.
There
in
are,
it.
and
Yeah.
it's a devotion to the avant-garde.
Yeah.
And it's just you utilize the fact that there's a strong melody and a strong theme, and then you can hang your hat on that and torture it.
Yeah.
That was our idea, was just
Wow.
hang on to the fact that at some point the theme of Heart of Glass is going to appear, but for the rest of the time it's going to be bludgeoned and we're going to find some other world inside Heart of Glass, and that was the idea.
Oh God, it's so cool. And was it one of you that was like, let's start doing covers and let's do this one? And what was the first one?
That's I love these questions because I've always wanted to, for anyone who's interested. I don't think anyone, I'm not sitting around going, gosh, I can't wait for somebody to ask me this. But I mean, at the end of the day, it's like, these are great questions because you do want to kind of, these things were important decisions to us.
Yeah.
At the very beginning of the group, because we each wrote our own, we're all composers in other projects. So we had a coterie of original music, but then it was just sort of like, you jazz musicians, we're going to play some standards too.
Yeah.
So of course we played some standards. We used to play Miss Jones. We used to play, we would just pick some standards we like to play to be able to get 2 or 3 sets out of a situation. We didn't have enough original music right away.
Mm-hmm.
And we did have a bunch of original music, and we could have played only original music, but it was like, as a jazz musician, you're like, I'd like to also play, a monk tune or something.
Yeah.
And it's a part of how you play the music. And we were like, what if we started looking at some rock music in a way that people have delved in, but we do it in, like let's think about this, like how you can approach rock music in a different way. And one of the tricks is that Ethan, the pianist, had never listened to rock music. Actually, truly never had listened to it. When people say, I've never checked out rock music, he really never listened to rock music. I mean, of course, he knew like bands existed. Some. He didn't know.
He didn't know Nirvana.
He did
or
not.
Black Sabbath.
He did not. He never listened to any of that music. And so we started listing tunes, and you start with things that are more obscure. So Reed and I are going, what if we, dealt with, like, that grew into like Pixies or something. But at first it's like we're naming those things and it's just like zero response.
Yeah.
Ethan's sitting there just like, and we're like, okay, so the more and more this truly happened. We were at a rehearsal and we're truly sitting there listing tunes, and they start with more obscure shit. I'm just like, oh, this is my chance. We get to play a Sonic Youth tune, or we get to play a, Bad Brains tune as a piano trio. No, there's no knowledge of Bad Brains. There's no, what about Husker Du? No knowledge of any of this stuff. And then it's like, all right, we started paring it down. Then just the most obvious thing ever, So either it was Reed or I said, all right, fine. Nirvana Smells Like Teen Spirit. And this is 2000. So this is like, 6 years after Kurt Cobain tragically dies.
Yeah.
And it's just sort of like, how would you have been on the planet Earth and not known the song Smells Like Teen Spirit? I mean,
In
truly,
America.
this is astonishing, right?
Yeah.
And he's just like this. And that's when we got it. We're going to start there.
Yeah.
Because this could be a really unique opportunity to approach it without nostalgia, without this idea that everyone this was an important piece of music to us.
Yeah.
First of all, it really, with all due respect, it wasn't important to Reed or I.
Right.
Nirvana was not an important band to us.
Right.
We were 22 when they blew. And, if you were 16, if you were 15, maybe, and Nirvana hit, it could, of course, we respected the writing, Kurt Cobain's writing, and the records sound amazing. But that wasn't, we were like jazz. We listened to Paul Motion Trio and Keith Jarrett. We weren't like, man, Come As You Are is an unbelievable piece of music. I was immediately going, this sounds like they ripped the Police off. like the Come As You Are sounds like a Message in the Bottle backwards or something.
Yeah, heroin version of
exactly. It was cool, but it wasn't like I was sitting at home listening to Nirvana. And so we were like, Smells Like Teen Spirit is the most obvious thing, and he didn't know it.
Yeah.
So then we were like, we got this. We're going to be able to approach the music with the three perspectives. So you said, we all look a little different, like we're from different scenes. But so we have the classical music background, the jazz music background, rock music backgrounds mixing together.
Yeah.
And all of us meeting on the playing field of, we all love jazz and creative music and improvised music. And so how would we approach that? And that's how it began. It began with okay, well then Smells Like Teen Spirit. And we started swinging and started playing on it. And it had a vibe immediately. It was like, to us sounds great.
Yes.
So then we got that. We got a bunch of original music. Let's think of a few more. And that's when the sea opened up of Blondie, I Will Survive.
Yeah. Yeah.
How about I Will Survive? And I Will Survive is huge hook.
Yeah.
Ethan's like, I Will Survive. Yeah, I think I heard that. And so it's what can we do to these things to make them more complicated? Nobody's playing I Will Survive.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? We're these hardened criminals of the avant-garde playing the Knitting Factory Old Office.
And then you could start doing wedding gigs if you learn that song.
Exactly. And so it's just in the middle of all these originals, all of a sudden we're playing I Will Survive, and there's no irony in it because we're playing it like it's ours. We've hijacked it completely.
Absolutely.
And those early days, we never recorded that, but playing ABBA, for instance, we recorded Knowing Me, Knowing You. Mm-hmm. It was one of our favorite things we ever did.
Yeah.
And it's just torched. It's just but it's this big grand da 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 da. So you could be theatrical.
Yeah.
It could challenge the notion of the musical and the sort of theatrics and cinema behind jazz music, taking music from the theater.
Yep.
Taking music from big films of the era, and we imbued it with a sort of theatrical nature. Is this real that this is a piano trio? This is a piano, bass, and drums trio in modern jazz, and they're playing this that's the last music they're ever going to play. The ferocity of it, the grandiose nature.
Yeah.
It just hit. It's almost like when people use the term "lean in."
Yeah.
Instead of us trying to make it too hip, we just leaned into ABBA.
Yeah.
That's a great song.
Yeah.
If you lean in and go, that's a great song, instead of, it's ABBA, but we're these avant-garde guys. It was that was such an easy conclusion to us.
Yeah.
It was that's the first impression you're getting from this.
Right.
How about what the fuck is this?
Yes. Yes.
And luckily, by and large, the response was, what the fuck is this?
Yes.
And that's what it grew from.
It
grew from this is fertile artistic territory.
Yeah.
It was a light bulb. It wasn't, and people will like us if we play Black Sabbath. Again, that's an easy conclusion.
Right.
You're so unused to anybody giving a fuck about what you're doing.
Yes.
And it's just of course we're going to, and that's how it grew into an artistic statement for us. It was a powerful artistic statement for us. It was it wasn't funny. we could sense, of course, that it's got a humor element. Well, there's humor element in a lot of the heaviest art. Duchamp, there's a humor element. There's a humor element underneath some of the Thelonious Monk music.
Yeah. You know, I never thought about this until right now, but I feel like some of your covers are actually the heaviest Bad Plus songs.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
It was like we played the theme, you know, the record of our Suspicious Activity, which only has one piece. It was our third record on Columbia. And again, it's mostly original music.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like the only tune that isn't ours is the theme to Chariots of Fire.
Yeah.
So immediately you're like, that's piano music like you learn at piano lessons, you know, like, but you know, dun 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 dun, and it's the most you know, it's got this thing, and we're like, but we're just gonna take it, and we're gonna hit it head on, and it is the most, in my opinion,
so good.
It's in my opinion that is the most fierce thing we ever did. Is the version of Chariots of Fire off Suspicious Activity. The theme to Chariots of Fire is pure avant-garde music.
Yeah, it really is.
It's like Albert Eiler. It's like you take a big theme, you know, da, 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 da. It's like a, you know, you've got this like battlefield theme.
Yes.
And then you just use it as a launch pad for the most vicious avant-garde.
Bring it to war and slash it up. Yeah.
Exactly. And to us, that was a very interesting idea.
Wow.
That continued through the original music and continued through everything.
So how do you make it as an avant-garde musician?
That's the thing is, for me, it was more like we came out of the womb sort of like the three of us being sort of like, if we're going to make a statement, it's sort of got to be our statement.
Yeah.
It wasn't, we just didn't have, we're from the Midwest, you know, we're from Minnesota. Ethan was from Wisconsin, really nearby. And we grew up coming to the same shows, you know, the jazz shows we would see, and the Walker Arts Center in Minneapolis would have the you know, people like, you know, Peter Brotzman come in and play like avant-garde music, and then we had the punk scene of Minneapolis. We'd have, you know, the jazz, straight ahead jazz scene, seeing everybody, seeing McCoy Tyner every time he'd come to town, seeing Wynton Marsalis. We loved all that music.
Yeah.
It wasn't like we didn't dig Wynton Marsalis because he was part of this sort of neo jazz movement of the 80s. We loved those records. Or Branford Marsalis, one of our heroes. So there wasn't something telling us it was wrong.
Yeah.
Or telling us it was, you know, like, you know, you can't like that and that at the same time.
Yeah.
And so it's just more like how we did it, I guess, was just that we didn't try to do it. We just played what we wanted to play and what we wanted to hear, and willing to work day jobs. We're willing to turn down other gigs to play together.
Yeah.
Turn down things that would pay to play together. You know, the three of us were high, you know, like we were doing some gigs with people.
Yeah, of course.
And we had our own things as well.
Yeah.
But we just decided something was so special, we would just stick with it and try to make a sound that only the three of us could make.
Yes.
And in a way, you have a fighting chance then if you have something that people are dedicated to, just like a rock band would dedicate.
Yeah.
You got a name, you've got an idea behind that name, and you've got a concept, and you just don't give up.
Yeah.
And even if there was nobody there, which there were many, many times nobody there.
Right.
This idea that we bolted out of nowhere is a beautiful idea, but it's got a backstory of years and years and years.
It's the overnight success classic story,
Years of
whether
the
it's
three of
Billy
us-
Joel or Bad Plus. It's
Exactly,
like,
building to that moment where it finally made sense, and we're, you know, this is even after 2 years of the Bad Plus playing in front of no one at the Knitting Factory old office, or playing, you know, or doing whatever. But the three of us in our own projects spent so many years just being full frontal ignored.
Yeah.
Just like anyone that plays this music.
Yeah. So it must feel good to all of a sudden, not just opening for the Pixies and stuff. That's fine. That's epic for a jazz, for a jazz group. But to be like selling, you know, doing multiple nights, selling out as the Bad Plus, like you're
playing
like
the Village Vanguard.
You know, like
unbelievable.
I would see you in LA and it's always packed.
Yeah.
It's always packed. Even 2003, 4, 5, whatever. Like,
playing Royce Hall was
Yeah.
full. It was just like, I just can't believe this.
it's so sick.
Yeah, and just building it. That's the thing. We would just keep coming.
Yeah.
And for us, it was just like, we're going to play where everybody asks us to.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so, I mean, the fact that we were playing jazz clubs and we were playing Bonnaroo,
Yeah. Yeah.
you know,
So
it was
cool.
like, wait, so we're going to get a chance to play. Well, we're not going to dumb it down. It's going to be this fierce, crazy thing. And
Yeah, because you kind of are a rock band at the same time, even though you're the most unconventional.
yeah. It's like, it has
Like-
how about this? It has a rock band ethos.
Yeah. Energy.
And it still
Yeah,
does.
yeah,
It's like it's like you see it to this day. The ethos is that it's it's impactful on some front that isn't just the front that you would normally consider the way that that modern jazz music is impactful.
For sure.
And we always believed that you get this music in front of an audience that's willing to listen to you, and it will have an impact. Doesn't matter. Oh, I never knew about jazz. I never do whatever. Yeah, but that doesn't mean you're not going to be impacted when you finally see something or hear something. It's just all about exposure.
So you guys get to a place where you're super prominent jazz trio, like, like I said, in my eyes, I was like, oh, that's my favorite jazz trio, right? And then I know there's a lot of people that agreed with me, because when I'd go to your shows, I'd see all of them, right?
Yeah.
And so obviously being in a band is hard.
Mm-hmm.
So you get a new piano player. Now you've evolved into a quartet.
Yeah.
Which, but like, I loved you guys as a piano trio.
Mm-hmm.
And if you were like, oh yeah, we're gonna become a quartet with a guitar and a sax, I'd be like, all right, what is that going to sound like? Oh my God, the quartet is so amazing, dude.
Thank you.
And the new album, which, because this comes out next week, so the album is out.
Yep.
The new album, Complex Emotions, is so great, dude.
Thank you.
I love it, and it doesn't sound like the original Bad Plus, yet it still does, right? It's like you create such incredible sonic landscapes with this new ensemble. Like, I don't know, you already made one record too, but so the second record with this one, but I love it. I listened to it like 3 times last night.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the thing. The DNA of what we were all about is there. I mean, it does help to explain that Reed is, so the original band is Reed Anderson, me, and Ethan Iverson. Yeah. All 3 of us are composers. Yeah. So you have already a built-in, if between the 3 of us, actually Reed and I contributed the largest amount of original material. Ethan, of course, wrote great music. But if you look at record by record, Reed, of all of the original music, he would have a larger amount just because he's more prolific. Yeah. But we never chose it. Like, it was just like the best songs we could.
Because you guys just kind of come together. How does Bad Plus write a song?
We don't write together. We're composers. So we write our own music and we bring it in, and the band looks at it and plays it.
Like, what do you bring in? You bring in a demo track? Or you
no,
bring in
charts, or we learn it by rote. Because I play piano and so does Reed. So I would sit at the piano and show Ethan my music. Yeah. And he would learn it that way. Sometimes it would need to be written out.
And is it like sometimes you guys are like, I'm not really vibing that? Or
totally.
Did you just like, you guys come to practice or whatever, and you're like, here's a bunch of ideas.
Exactly. Oh, here's a bunch of songs.
Here's a bunch of songs. Yeah. Full-blown songs.
Who's got all the, and some worked and some didn't. Yeah. And just like anything, it's like, we'll play some for a little while, maybe it didn't, or not enough to be recorded. There was music that we never recorded.
Because most bands are not 100% of the band are composers.
Right.
That's very rare.
It's very rare. And also
whether it's jazz or pop or rock or whatever it is.
It's another weapon we had. Yeah. It's not one perspective. Yeah. So there's not a leader. Yeah. So as much as there's a group improvisational aspect to some of the famous piano trios, they all have a name of a person in front of them. Yeah. Even though the Keith Jarrett trio is Gary Peacock and Jack DeJohnette, and it's iconic, and those guys are iconic musicians on their instruments.
Still a name, still front.
It's still Keith Jarrett's trio, and it's still he's in charge of that. The nature of what they were up to. For sure. And so for us, there was never that. Yeah. There was 3 leaders that came together, 3 leader personalities that came together, and somehow with our history of growing up together, we were able to balance being from different perspectives, different whatever, and make a sound. And to have a bunch of original music from 3 different brains. Yeah. Yeah. And so when you hear the new Bad Plus of Ben Monder and Chris Speed joining the band, post Orrin Evans, who's a brilliant pianist in his own, like we made that transition with Orrin for 2 records, where that was some of my favorite music we ever did, where we were still a piano trio. Yeah. And through the pandemic, we decided to morph into something. We were going to go into more of a quartet music idea with Orrin. And then it became more and more apparent that Orrin really wanted to focus more on his own brilliant career that he had before us. Yeah. So it was more like, okay, totally amicable, cool, because Orrin was an old friend, very old friend, especially of Reed's. Reed's was in Orrin's wedding in the 90s. So it's always been very family-like. Like Ben Monder and Chris Speed are people we played with in different environments. I've been in Chris Speed's trio for over a decade. The saxophonist Chris. So we have these histories. That's really cool. I mean, I've known Ben Monder since the mid-90s. Wow. So Reed...
You're already long-time collaborators.
Ben was playing with Reed in his quartet. It's like they kind of get the idea of like... So if it sounds like this sort of like version... It's like Bad Plus 2.0 or whatever. It's because Reed and I wrote a lot of the music you're hearing in the original Bad Plus.
Right.
So that compositional voice is imbued.
Yes.
So when we decided, what if we came out, challenged the notion again of what it is.
Yeah.
And it's me and Reed, of course, being the founding members of the Bad Plus. I mean, we did founder. We
Yeah,
did
yeah.
get Ethan and start the band.
Yeah, yeah.
I did name the band. We
Yeah.
did write a
Oh, the
larger
Bad
amount.
Plus is a Dave King name.
Yeah,
Okay.
and
you
the,
name the songs.
I name a lot of them, and
I
the
can
and
tell.
the art and the art and the art and the art. Name the records,
Yeah.
and the art of the records was mostly mine.
Nice. That's awesome.
Or the art direction, especially.
Yeah.
And so
Which
you
are
can
all
see
really
that the
beautiful.
aesthetic is
Yeah.
being. Thank you.
Yeah.
The aesthetic is being controlled.
Yeah.
And it's being controlled, ironically, from the rhythm section a lot of the time.
Yeah.
Like the idea to do covers was Reed and my idea.
Yeah. That's great.
And so it's not to say that diminishes the unbelievable contribution that Ethan. I mean, anybody needs to know Ethan is a hyper brilliant musician and is enjoying a post Bad Plus career as a writer and musician and pianist of the highest caliber in the world.
Yeah, he's
so
amazing.
He's brilliant beyond words, and a great guy.
Yeah.
And so it's like, for us, the way that the new music sounds and the way that these guys morphed into this is the band now.
Yeah.
For us, it was like we came to the conclusion through the pandemic that the Bad Plus, not to sound like flippant, but the Bad Plus is what we say it is.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so we did a record with Joshua Redman. It's not like
Yes.
having a saxophone with us is that super different. We worked with Bill Frisell.
Yeah.
We never recorded that, sadly, but we did an entire project with Bill Frisell
Wow.
where we played his music. We also did a bunch of shows with him at Newport, and we played one show at Newport, but we played the Lincoln Center with him, playing Paul Motion's music.
Cool.
So
Very cool.
for we've done things with guitar, we've done things with sax, and we were just like, what if we just went full on? And we got Ben and Chris, and they wanted to do it. They're like family members to us. And we just morphed it into the second record of the new Bad Plus is out.
It's so good, dude. Go listen to
you.
Complex Emotions. Wow, man.
Thank you.
I love it.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
It feels incredible.
Thank you.
Where'd you record it?
That was recorded, actually, ironically, that's where Nirvana recorded In Utero, a studio called Pachyderm, which is in Cannon Falls, Minnesota. It's in the middle of nowhere. In Cannon Falls, Minnesota is a studio called Pachyderm where Steve Albini, rest in peace,
wow.
did the In Utero. Also, PJ Harvey recorded there. There's been like some iconic rock records recorded there. We made a few records there. We made a record called For All I Care there years ago.
Oh, yeah.
And we made a record called Never Stop, the first Never Stop record.
Nice.
Because we made Never Stop 2 with Oren in
Yeah.
a different studio in New York. We've mostly recorded in New York, but we've recorded a few albums in Minnesota and a few in England. And we did the new one, Complex Emotions, there with this great engineer who did our last one, a guy named Brett Bullion, who I worked with. A Minnesota guy, and it's his second record with us. The first one, the new band, was recorded at the New Power Station, which was, I think, in Connecticut. I'm not sure exactly. I think it's Connecticut because
Where
it's
was
in the
it?
middle of the woods, and they remade the old power station in the middle of the woods.
There's so much Minnesota talent. You know,
Man.
we've had on the pod the great Jimmy Jam.
Yeah, of course. That's a beyond legendary figure.
Absolutely. And we've done jams with Cory Wong.
Yeah, Corey's a great guy.
So it's like, I feel like Minnesota always enters the building.
That's wonderful. Thank you. Thank
No,
you.
we got Dave King. Let's go,
exactly.
dude.
Yeah, who's Jimmy Jam? What's that all about?
Dude.
You got Dave King now. I mean,
Let's go.
Jimmy Jam.
Jimmy Jam was technically your opener now.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Well, he's a great hero to anyone who cares about anything coming from Minnesota.
Absolutely, man. So what is touring like for you with the Bad Plus? Like, what is that like as I've only done touring in terms of like the pop world and in the rock world. I've never done it as like the jazz world, playing multiple nights in a city, doing it. Like, what is it like?
Well, you hope it's multiple nights.
Right,
Most of the time it isn't, but we, what it's like is like anything else when you're the only difference, I suppose, from touring rock music and touring in a jazz group is, other than the first 10 or so years, we used to bring the bass out with us, Reed's bass, which would be difficult to fly.
Oh my God.
And got wrecked a few times in flight case situations, mishaps. Traveling the world with a bass, paying overweight charges for airlines.
Waiting
but we
for
don't
it.
tour with gear. It's like cymbals,
Yeah.
and then you got piano pickups. You know, you got you have
You're
a
like
sound
a DJ.
person.
Yeah.
It's really like it's the same thing. The grind of city to city, and sometimes we would get to do multiple nights. You know, like we'd be able to do 4 nights here or 3 nights, but then we play a theater or a club.
Yeah.
A club maybe 2 or 3 nights, or a theater 1 night, and you're just town to town in America, town to town in Europe. You get to go to Japan every now and
Are you
again.
flying? Are you driving? Are you...
Flying or flying to, like if we would tour America, let's say we would start in Seattle, fly to Seattle, then rent a car.
Yeah.
We got the cymbals. We used to have the bass, so rent like a Ford Windstar, and you just go, Portland, Eugene, maybe have to catch a flight to San Francisco. Then you hit San Francisco. Go down playing some smaller cities in California.
It's just the 3 of you. Is there a 4th person?
We would have a sound person every now and again when we could afford it.
Yeah.
It would depend on how much the tour was looking like it would pay.
Right.
Then we would bring either a sound person out, tour manager, sound person in one.
Yeah.
We haven't been able to do that in quite some time, just because the shrinking of the revenue of selling your records on the road, or CD sales, or doing whatever.
Because you would rely a lot on merch sales being CD sales.
Merch
and
sales being able to pay for the extra person in the extra room.
Sure.
And but we still every now and again we've been able to dial our sound scene, just being able to be independent of knowing what we need from the house sound person.
Yeah.
Especially in theaters, when you have like a sound person that's really knows the room and knows the acoustics of the room. But we would love to always have a sound person with us. It would make a big difference. But and you travel that way, and you have the same thing you would normally, and you just grind it out. We fly to Europe, and then you might have flights every day going from country to country, or you're going from getting on trains, and you're loading this, you got the cymbal bag in your suitcases, and you just do it DIY that way, and you got an agent, and you got a manager, and you just figure out, we're going to Europe for 2 weeks. I mean, I just got back from Japan with Julian Lodge, and we're going to Japan for a week. You just roll over, play 5 shows, and fly wherever you're playing next. It's same thing, other than you just with rock, you just don't have the level of gear needs, or it's just, for me, it's like I don't bring a drum set, but I have a rider where it's like, I need this. It's just simple. It's just a 4-piece bebop kind of kit. And if the heads are, the right heads, I can make my sound happen if they're the right sizes. It's not like I need a brand specific thing, even though I have endorsements, but they're not hardcore.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm a Zildjian endorsee, so I bring my cymbals and
cymbals
sticks.
are the most important anyway.
Exactly.
Come on.
It's like, it's true.
Yeah.
I mean, there are drums companies I love.
It's the voices.
But it's exactly. But it's like, if I get the right heads and the right sizes, I can make my sound happen.
Yeah, for sure. All right, let's talk about your drumming with toys.
Okay.
You've always had these like unique toys that you incorporate musically into the set. Where did that come from? How do you find these? How do you travel with them?
Yeah, that's a great question. That's been something that started when I was really young, when I was playing. It was more like, I suppose it was just the nature of how I've always kind of approached it. Whereas I've always approached the way I play and the way I even hear the music is, I'm not even claiming at all to be, like, I'm different from everybody, but I have noticed
you are different. I will say it as not you. You are different than everybody.
Okay. Thank you. I'll take it as a compliment. Thank you. I know you mean it as a compliment. That's nice to hear.
I don't.
That's even better. That's more of what I'm used to. Dave, Dave, stop. I think it's just because I would just think like, what's usable? Like, this is a squeezy toy, I mean, what can I do with this? There's been periods where I've had more than normal. Like little Fisher Price. There's this thing called a Happy Apple, which I named my trio Happy Apple after. It's like, it's a beautiful little Fisher Price toy from the 60s, and it jingles and it makes this beautiful sound. So it's just like, instead of a wind chime, or instead of something you would see as normal, I would have these things that were left of center of what was a noisemaker.
Yeah.
And then it could grow into like that has a use. That has a use that's outside. I mean, what if I hit the cymbal with it? What does it sound like when I hit the cymbal really hard with this little penguin that jingles?
Yeah.
And it's like, all of a sudden you're playing, you reach up and you hit a cymbal, and it looks like you've got this like Humpty Dumpty plastic thing in your hand, and the cymbal goes bang and jingles, and then it goes away. It becomes like, not only is it obviously has a theatrical element to it.
It definitely does.
But it's a musical element first and foremost.
Yeah.
And it's something that I've always felt like, well, that's not something that you hear or see every day.
Yep.
And these things appear on the albums. You can hear them jingling back there.
Yeah.
I remember once, I guess the extremes I took it was I had a bag of all this stuff in it that I would carry. And then there was one record I made where I was soloing on the album, which is rare to do for me to do a solo on an album, but I was doing a solo, an open solo, and I just reached down into the bag and started rooting around in the bag.
Yeah.
So the sound is just my hand rooting around in the bag while I'm playing another idea. And it sort of becomes this thing where you're just like, you hear somebody kind of rummaging through the trash. It just is another way of having a mysterious element to what is actually happening here.
Yes.
And I used to bring a cooking pot with me. That opening fill, for instance, of Big Eater is a cooking pot on a floor tom. So I used to carry a cooking pot with me. So it's an old pot my mom used to make food out of that I just have always had. And I put it on the drum and I was like, brrr, and like these roll. And that's why it's so startling sound. It's not a cowbell.
Yeah.
It's not just a piece of sheet metal. It's an actual cooking pot. And I used to carry it. And it was so great is the great drummer, Justin Faulkner, who plays with Branford Marsalis. He's an incredible drummer. He told me he saw me as a kid in Philadelphia. He still remembers it to this day. He was in high school or something, and he saw me play with this cooking pot. And he said it was like this moment for him. This is fun because he's so brilliant and so fun to hear from people that were inspired by you in some way.
Absolutely.
And, he's just a stratospheric musician and a sweet guy. And he was just, almost every time I bump into him, he reminds me of the cooking pot that changed his way of thinking.
Yeah.
Wait, so he's playing a cooking pot on a floor tom at the Newport Jazz Festival.
So cool.
And he's just like, what is that sound?
Yeah, it just sounds like a percussion instrument you've never heard before.
Right. And it's the commitment then to bring the cooking pot
to bring it. Yeah.
So then it becomes like, oh, it's a commitment.
Would you cook with the pot too?
I used to.
Yeah.
And so
don't want to ruin the tone.
Exactly. Yeah. So having it or having whatever, these toys or walkie, I used to play with walkie. I mean, I still do every now and again, but there's moments where you hear walkie-talkies that are feeding back.
Yeah.
It's all just like, then that was my children. Like they would get walkie-talkies for a birthday present. I was looking at the walkie-talkies once, they're toy walkie-talkies. And I'm just like, wow, they have an antenna. And you hold them together and they start to feed back into different tones.
Yeah.
And I just took the walkie-talkies from my son.
Yeah. These are mine now.
And they're mine now.
Yeah.
And then I was like, okay. And you hear back there's a thing feeding back. You can hear it on the Teen Spirit at the end when we hits the chord. You hear these. There's walkie-talkies. So they're static sound or whatever. Aphex Twin, that beginning that sounds like it's an effect.
Yeah,
is I'm play the whole track with the most out thing is the whole track is with only one stick, and I'm playing a toy voice changer. So the thing that goes, I am a robot, and you hold it up to your voice, and you have like robot setting, just a thing from a toy store.
Wow. So
you hit I found you could hit the drum with the voice, with the mouth part of the voice changer, and it feeds back from it. So when you're hearing Aphex, it's me hitting the snare with a megaphone looking voice changer.
So cool.
Yeah. So the drum rushes and everything are me trying to play the rushes with a stick and a voice changer. And it's like it's almost like the less you think about it and shed it, the more amazing. It's like it just becomes something you grab and you just throw it into the mix and you just get, it's just like, it's not like I worked on my voice changer chops for, you know what I mean? And then it just, those things then they go away. I used the voice changer for a few years and then I just don't carry the voice changer. The walkie-talkies went away for years, even though I carried them wherever. And now I'm thinking, just recently I'm thinking about the walkie-talkies again. Like, what can I do with the walkie-talkies? And it's never about like, look at me, I got walkie-talkies. It's just a sound. It's just an idea. As a sound is sound to me. So hit the cymbal and then hold the walkie-talkie up to it. And of course, the cymbal's emitting a sound.
Yeah.
So that's going to enter the walkie-talkie and it's going to come out the other walkie-talkie.
Wow, dude.
And that's the idea.
It's so unique and original. And hits so hard. It sounds incredible. Like
Thank you.
how you use it. Yeah. Cause I would watch you play too. And I'm just like, is he just pulling random shit out of a bag? but then it works. And like the element of surprise.
Yeah, it is random shit out of the bag a lot of the time. That's the thing. and that's what it lets you. And, it depends on who I'm with of what I'll bring out. It's not as outrageous as it was at one point. This of course makes it sound like I'm like part, like birthday party clown, which it was never the case. It was like only if every now and again you see this an orb appear that jingled. Yeah. It wasn't like every song all of a sudden I've got it. It was just every now and again at the end of a song you'd hear something jingling, and I would typically not show it to the audience, or it would just be like on a drum for a minute. I've got just a little
some noise.
Guy making a noise, a little roly-poly toy that's over there, and then it just goes away, or the walkie-talkies would appear. Every now and again you'd hear people giggling. Yeah. But that was never I understood it, but I was always slightly upset if there would be giggling that would interrupt the notion of the quote unquote artistic statement.
For sure. I think there's also this giggling with like happiness or excitement of it too. Just like,
and
what?
That way
I
it's
would
fun.
definitely laugh in a way of just like this. What? This is incredible.
Yeah. Well, thank you. And of course I want somebody to have a good time and to return to innocence from it.
For sure.
But it would be like, there's also a sonic thing happening, which is what its number one role is. Yeah. So then you can understand why it would make joyous. Yeah. There could be somebody like, oh my God, he's got a fucking walkie-talkies. They're ET walkie-talkies. And it's just like, what's going on right now? There's a whimsical element to it. Yeah. But what's going on is it's also a sound. It's not, they would just happen to be ETs because that's what my son got for his birthday. And I didn't sit there and go, I'm going to go out and source another walkie-talkie. It was just like, those are the walkie-talkies I'm using. It was just, they just happen to be ET walkie-talkies.
I'm going to figure them out. They're here. I hear a sound. I'm going to put them in.
Exactly.
Okay. So you guys did Stravinsky's Rite of Spring, the whole thing in an album. It was a very daring thing to take on. How did that come about?
That came about, long story short, we had recorded some classical music. Yeah. Like I said, all three of us have dealt with the contemporary classical world and in some way or another. And we all had our favorite composers of some 20th century classical music, and we were dealing with we did a movement, the Apollo ballet of Stravinsky. We did a movement on our record, For All I Care, and we were playing that live. It was an excerpt of like maybe 7 minutes, and we also did some stuff from Georg Ligeti and Milton Babbitt. So a couple of pieces we thought we could do a piece called Femme, which translates to metal, and Semi-Simple Variations, a Milton Babbitt piece that we thought translated with bass, drums, and piano. Yeah. And it caught the ear of some of the classical world, cognoscenti, whatever. This sort of like, we started to get some respect from that world too. So like, this is not just some guys playing, fighting their way through a piece like that. Yeah. It's a real statement.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so we were like, okay, there's something here. And then we were we were going to be commissioned from Duke University and co-commissioned from the Lincoln Center in New York of a large ensemble, like an orchestral piece, distilled by piano, bass, and drums.
Wow.
And so we were like, well, that's a slippery slope, because that's number one, that's a commitment, a time commitment. Yeah. That would take away from our own work, our own music and everything. But then it was like a challenge. It was like, well, what are you going to do? It's like the same thing with Smells Like Teen Spirit. It's like, you just lean in. Yeah. It smells like Teen Spirit. It's not an obscure piece of blah, 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 or an obscure Beatles tune or something. It's more like, Smells Like Teen Spirit. It smells like Teen Spirit. So you just go the Rite of Spring. Yeah. It's like, can we do it? And is that the way? If you think about it, if you're going to do a 20th century orchestral piece, well, how do you do that with the piano, bass, and drums? Well, there was a 2-piano score that Stravinsky reduced it to two pianos in the 50s. He had a 2-piano score, and we thought, there's our source material. You can use the orchestral versions for other information, but in essence, there's no drums. Right. So it's like, we'd have to deal with translating it to a drum set and a piano and a bass. Well, if there's already a 2-piano score, he can deal with the 2-piano score, Ethan can.
Yeah.
And we can have that be our basis of the material. It started to look like it was just going to be too much.
Yeah.
And so we actually attempted to back out. This is a true story where we just decided we were on tour. And we're like, it's just be too much. It's just too much. We're listening to the 2-piano score, looking at it, listening, of course, familiar with many orchestral recordings of it. And in many ways, it was on me to come up with a drum score. It's 42 minutes or whatever it is of like no bar repeats, basically. It's very, very complex. And it's like...
no bar repeats.
Yeah,
it's constantly moving.
Yeah, yeah. And you're just like, okay. And I'm just freaking out.
Yeah.
And we're like, this isn't doing a 6-minute Milton Babbitt tune, which is hard enough. And it was like, you know what? We can't do it. Called the manager. And he's like, I got bad news. We sort of already committed you to it. And they've printed materials for the world premiere.
Oh, shit.
And we were like, so wait, they printed materials for a world premiere. This is this janky behind the scenes like manager stuff. Let's just say he's not our manager anymore. But it was like the look on Ethan's face, I'll never forget it. Ethan and I made the call.
Yeah.
We were on tour in Europe. They're in Ethan's hotel, in his room. We were like, Ethan and I are like, Reed was probably at the gym or something. We're like, we're just making the call. We're not doing this. We decided this is a band. We're backing out. We never signed anything.
Yeah.
This is early on. And they said, no, you got to do it. We actually signed the commissioning contract, which involved, we were going to be artists in residence at Duke University. We were going to work with their PhD candidates on their compositions. This whole thing became a thing.
Whoa.
And we were like, wait, so it's a whole thing. And we have to develop it and world premiere it at Duke University and then do a Lincoln Center, a New York performance. Yeah. The pressure immediately was unbelievable. We had like 7 months before the world premiere at Duke University. And we started working on it then. We were like, fuck it, we got to do it. And I was really upset about it because I have to say it was a bitch for everybody. It was really hard.
Yeah.
But
Seems incredibly hard.
I had to come up with my own score.
Yeah.
They could ultimately work with the source material because we were playing it. This isn't a jazz version.
Right.
And if you hear it, it's on Sony Masterworks, which is the classical label. And we wanted to do it justice. I mean, Stravinsky being one of the heroes of all music, to us, to anyone, we wanted to do it justice. We weren't going to do just, and not to say it isn't cool to do a jazz version, and people have the jazz musicians have looked at movements of the Rite of Spring and they've played a version of it, swinging and blowing on it.
Yeah,
it was more like, we're going to play the Rite of Spring, the whole thing. We're going to play it. We're going to play it like it's written, and we're going to mess with some tempos and we're going to mess with some things to make it speak with those instruments. But if you listen to our version and you back to back it with the orchestral version, it's the Rite of Spring.
Yeah, absolutely.
So there's no deviation.
Yeah.
The only deviation is that a drum set is playing along, and I'm not playing beats with it. I'm playing all of the orchestral kind of percussion ideas, and the tight press rolls and the cymbals, cascading, whatever, and animating it in a way that a drum set has to animate it. And so it took rehearsing every sound check, because we didn't live near each other or anything. So you rehearse in every sound check on the road for months, taking it movement by movement, using the 2-piano score. And we finally kind of put it together and world premiered it at Duke. And it was a very deeply pressure-filled situation. You think to yourself, like, you're outside the classical music world, but like orchestra members, they deal with this kind of, that's their thing, is they're interpretive artists. They're not writing the music. They're interpreting the music of these great composers. So they're on their heads on the chopping block,
Oh yeah.
And you've got to live in this world of the pressure of interpreting. And so we did it, and it went well. We went and did it in New York, and then it became a we can tour it opportunity. And we had this big idea to tour it in Europe, and we had heard rumblings that the Stravinsky family had a problem with this.
Whoa.
Because there was a drum set on it or whatever, they felt that it was like, this was again, this sort of like not honoring what Igor wanted. And we thought, well, what do you mean? I mean, we're playing the 2-piano version. It's got respect from the classical music world. We're getting reviews, great reviews of it.
Yeah.
And like really great reviews of it from the classical world and jazz world. It was 5-star review in Downbeat, the only 5-star review we've ever gotten. That's like the best you can get in Downbeat. You rarely see a 5-star review in Downbeat.
Yeah.
For anything. And it was like, we really did it. And we tracked it, and we were going to go out and do it. And then the Stravinsky family got upset, whether they were what they were looking for, whether they were looking for a money thing from the label. And Sony was like, we'll take care of it. And then they didn't. And they ended up shutting us down playing it live in Europe. We only played a few times in Europe before they shut it down. America, we were able to, there was territory where legally it was public domain. Like the 2-piano score was public domain. So we toured it in Europe. I mean, in America. So if you saw us, if you saw us do it, there's some films of us doing it on YouTube. There's at the Ojai Festival, Classical Music Festival. There's a great film of us doing it. There's pieces of it on YouTube of us playing it because we played it in its entirety. That's the program. And so in Europe we had this whole idea to tour it, and it fell apart. We couldn't tour it. They shut us down legally.
The Stravinsky.
Yeah, and it was just like
crazy.
and we was like, man, they had and they cited like the drum set.
Yeah.
And it was like, well,
you're the problem, Dave.
I ended up being the problem. It's like, of course, I ended up being the problem. I was the problem for many.
Is on it.
Exactly. I was the problem for many of our criticisms. Why not another one?
That's crazy.
Yeah.
Well, it's a beautiful piece. Listen to it. Oh my God. It's incredible. It's remarkable.
Thank you.
It's a lot.
Appreciate it. It's a lot.
It's a lot. Even listening to it.
It was a large undertaking. Yeah. I will admit. I had a few moments of like, this Stravinsky bullshit.
Oh,
that would have been a T-shirt I would have
been
wearing for a while. Like couple dark moments in rehearsal where I just walked out, just going, I can't do it,
dude. This is too much.
Yep.
One thing we would all love for you to bring back is rational funk. Come on, dude. Where's we love the Dave King humor, dude.
Yeah. Well.
Stravinsky ruined the humor.
No, Stravinsky took my light away from me. Well, how about this? I'll never say never. I mean, that was, the original run of Rational Funk was in 2014 or 2015 and ended in 2016 May. And then we brought it back during the pandemic for a few weeks. We gave, it was always for free and was always just like an art project for me, a release of some sort.
Are you just improvising?
Or
it was no written script.
Oh, no script.
It's just cameras on, we're recording. You're funny, bro.
Well,
dude,
either that or I have other issues, but it was more like what wasn't improvised was only the topics. So I would put together a list of the topic. It was like, okay, memorization or whatever topic we were dealing with, name a topic or whatever I was dealing with. It was like whatever we'd be improvising, being a studio musician, we would use these giant topic thing or brushes, or like playing an odd time. There's one called Odd Time, and then it goes into this thing called Odd Time Dance Party, and there's it's lunacy, as you know. I mean, and so the whole idea was born from like, what if, just like the toys, what if there was an instructional series that from a real person, but the real person is in a character, so they're not themselves, but they are their name. And my playing is always very serious on it.
Yeah,
like I'm actually playing on it.
Yeah.
So, but it's like you stumbled upon it like in the woods or something. Like, what the hell is this? And it's like constant beeping of swearing. I thought to myself, wouldn't it be insane? Like the old school instructional video, you put it on a Steve Gadd instructional video, and he's swearing incessantly, and the words are going along the bottom of the screen, like some of the phrases.
Yeah.
Like there was one. Like there's an entire Instagram that's dedicated to Rational Funk poll quotes, and like you look at them isolated, and it's insanity. There's one that says Yoda likes violence. These are the things that I obviously said.
Yeah, that just came out.
Like there's one that's on the bottom. Don't have children. Once you have children, your life is over. So there's all these like like unbelievable, like insane. And so they would just like take the topic, you know, and just roll. So the guy I did it with, this guy named Joe Johnson, great friend and you know, cinematographer, really. We just went to a studio and we just recorded in a few blocks of just like spend an afternoon topic into topic, and then there's really no edits. It's truly
so
not
funny.
edited. That's why it just goes from one thing, and then we would do the drop the curtain moment on these moments and have a really bad intro. Like the art of it is, it looks bad. It looks
great.
like some menu at like the Rainforest Cafe of the Mall of America. It's like terrible font, and you're hearing this bad, you know, hi-hat, like whoa, and you're hearing like this thing.
It's very well done. I feel like you should bring it to Comedy Central or Adult Swim. You know, my neighbor is Brendan, the creator of Metalocalypse.
Wow.
Yeah, he lives across the street.
Really? Is
Yeah.
that the same guy as Aqua Teen Hunger Force?
No, it's a different guy.
Wow.
Did you ever watch Metalocalypse?
Yes, it's unbelievable.
Yeah. So he's the main guy. He's the writer. He's the director. He's all the voices. He is Death Clock. He's the guitar. He's the everything.
I love it, by the way. And yeah, we never shopped it. We never tried anything.
so good,
it was
dude.
just for the musicians, and it ended up having this cult place in the you know, people know it unbelievably all over the world in the sort of like small pocket.
Dude, the one I was laughing because I was thinking about when you had Mark Juliana on.
Yeah.
And you're asking him to like play crazy drums and you mute the drums.
Yeah.
Every he plays.
Yeah, that was an idea I had.
Dude,
I was like,
I howled
Oh,
when
man.
I saw
yeah,
that, dude.
I was like, because he was at the filming of that one, because there's a few guests. There's rarely any guests, but every now and again we would do a remote version. And that was Bad Plus was playing at the Highline Ballroom in New York, and you know, Mark's an old friend of mine, and I was like, man, we gotta have Mark, you got to be on Rational Funk. And he loved Rational Funk, and he was like, of course. And he came to the sound check. So that's my kit. He came, we sound checked. And then after the sound check, my friend, a guy named Noah Hutton, another filmmaker in New York, he would do the remote ones, because the remote ones are in New York mostly.
Yeah.
There's one out here with Dave Elich. That Dave Elich, the drummer, Dave
remember
Elich,
that one. I
friend.
remember
so
that
one is where we have a Jewish guy learning Christmas carols. So the theme was, we're teaching the Jewish guy how to play Christmas carols on the drum set.
Oh my god.
So Mark
dude.
was always,
drums.
of course, like, you got to have Mark on. So what's my idea? My idea was, of course, Mark is like, you know, so brilliant technically. And it was like, what if we, and I told Mark the idea, you know, he's like, totally. Of course, Mark was totally down. I said, the idea is, you know, you're on, and you can see that I feel slightly threatened. So the immediate idea is that, like, I'm trying to make sure that people remember this my show, and that I'm Dave King, and that listen, I'm not nothing. You know, yeah, Mark's great, but it's like,
I want to support him.
Yeah, I want to support. And the whole thing is, we love each other. We support each other in the drum community. There's no competition. And then it's like, how do we mute him? Well, then I've got sort of like, I've got a piece of tape on my pants, and it's just a signal to the sound person. The whole idea is that it's a signal. Because I don't have a mute button, or else you would see it. So I'm like, Mark, I'm going to tape the thing. Mark was crying. He's like, yes,
you guys kept
yes.
straight faces.
Yeah, total straight face.
Yeah.
Mark was great.
Yeah.
And I'm like, the whole thing begins like, Mark and I, you know, we're pals, and I'm in Mark's corner, and everybody knows Mark's brilliant. Everybody knows whatever. Come on, do some of that Mark Juliana stuff. And he starts playing, of course he's playing. We're recording it. So then in the post-production, the whole time, it's this camera so brilliantly slowly, because the guy did that shot. That one is a documentary dude. So he's used to following like in unscripted moments. And he was amazing at that. And it just slyly goes down, and you're seeing me tap on the words mute. Yeah, it goes right immediately. You always have the first note. And the best part of that whole thing was that there were people that actually got mad that I was muting him.
It's the best part. Yeah.
Like, the best part is when people you throw things out in the wild sea. You're gonna have some responses that you cannot believe. That was every now and again there'd be a response. I can't fucking believe Dave's muting Mark. You know he's threatened. You know
they just don't get it.
Yeah, you're
just
like, you really don't get what we're doing. You know, the whole idea of muting Mark Juliana, I thought was so brilliant. You know,
it is, dude.
And like, not to say I'm, you know, but it's a brilliant idea, flat out, to mute Mark Juliana every time he starts playing. And he plays like 4 or 5 different times, and he's playing all this great shit. You can see that he's really playing. He's doing his thing. And I'm going like, man, that whole thing you with your feet, where you're like with that 1 foot thing, do that thing. And he goes, yeah, and mutes again. And there's no sound, and he's doing. And at the very end, I'm like, take us out, take us out. Just give us more of that Mark Giuliano shit. He's like this. He's like this, and it just goes away. And that's just, it's just mayhem. Essentially, the whole idea was just going to make this mayhem thing that appears on YouTube only. Never shopped it. Never made any money off of it. Never.
I should have called Mark and told him ahead of time that you were coming, and not told you, and had him like walk in with like a Gatorade ice thing at the end of the interview and just pour it on.
Exactly. Something. He was of course amazing. We had a few different guests over the time.
Oh man. So it's fun. It's very fun. And I know that you are very confident and outspoken in how you have so much hair. And you just shave it for the ladies, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I say this all the time. I read in Cosmopolitan magazine that women love, a man with a shaved head. Yeah. So I mean, like I state many times, when you see me when I grow my hair out, it's like, it's huge. It's huge. It's just like, it's uncontrollable, and it's just easier to take care of on the road. When
you must really care about what the women think of you, because there's so much hair for you to have to spend that much time getting rid of it every day.
Yeah. How about this? As a heterosexual male, I'll say this: as a garden variety in today's landscape of everything, I'm just a straight up normal, just a Midwest doofus, just right down the mainstream. So I care. Yes, I do care.
We thank you.
Yeah. Anyway,
we thank you. I've been spending years growing this hair. I'm afraid if I shave it once, it'll never come back.
It's like, how about this? When you lose your hair, which I did early.
What?
Exactly. You just thank the maker that if you have a head that looks okay with it shaved.
Yes.
So I'm like, I have to say, I lucked out. I think my head looks okay shaved.
Yeah.
There's some people I think it doesn't.
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, at least having kind of a round face, it works.
There's the mustache.
Yeah, you just kind of like
nice eyebrows.
I'm just working with what I got here. Yeah, Elmo. That's all I can do.
It's great. If you wouldn't mind, would you put the beanie back on?
Sure.
Yeah, I don't really want to look at that the whole rest of the time you talk.
That's that moment in the SpongeBob movie where like they have he takes his Poseidon takes his, and it's like the glare of his bald head. All right, that's it. King Midas, whatever.
So we'd love to talk to you about the current state of jazz from your perspective with the Bad Plus, and also just outwardly as a fan. So like, where do you think jazz is right now, and how does someone make a living in 2024 playing jazz?
I mean, I think there's a very healthy audience. Yeah. Again, the more, I suppose, the more exposure to via whatever lens. Let's say you have someone like Robert Glasper or someone where you have a lens that people maybe could see through an R&B or hip hop perspective to become a fan of his, and then seeing that he's doing this thing that's very personal, or Kamasi Washington, or people like the LA scene, that's been happening through the lens of like the work with Kendrick Lamar or something. There's always some sort of way that an audience can grow through something they're more familiar with in the popular world, and then it's like, oh, what's this all about? What's this West Coast thing all about? Or what's jazz translating like today with an overt hip hop or R&B influence? Or is the canon widening like it always does? Since it's such an organic art form, there are so many streams, and there always was. So for me, I think the current state just involves that sort of like ever widening use of the source material and text to work from that's more and more readily available to people all over the world. So you have electronic, music still being a reference for things, or R&B being a reference, and hip hop being a reference. However abstract they get there, however you translate you being into hip hop and having that inform your music, for whether it be from a beat culture, DJ culture, or whatever.
Yeah.
It translates somewhere into something that can be used in an improvisational text.
Yes.
And I think that that's kind of where things are right now, is again this sort of like idea that it evolves into more of like what's happening in the culture, in the popular world, and then it filters through these sort of outlier people who are interested in the technical agenda on the instrument, meets some sort of harmonic agenda, meets some whatever, and a new thing starts to appear, and a new audience starts to appear for those things. So on the downside of something that I think is happening today, if I can be controversial for a moment, it's just my opinion, is that with the sort of easy conclusion, sugar rush version of the way people are taking in information, whether either an attention span is shrinking, you're only checking a clip of somebody, versus knowing their albums, knowing what they're up to. If you're only watching somebody shred on a clip and you think that's an art form, or that's an art statement equivalent to when you use the word jazz music, or whatever, it's like, to me, I get every now and again worried or frustrated in the sort of macking nature of an audience perspective of what creative music or modern jazz music or whatever you want to use term. If you don't have to use the term jazz, but music where there's improvising, music where there's something, maybe it's instrumental, whether it's whatever, where there's something less mainstream about it.
Yeah.
If the artistic statement just becomes a technical, Black Hawk helicopter landing on your face, and that's your art statement, to me, that's just that's borderline barbaric,
for sure.
It's like, okay, what else you got?
Yeah.
And I just think there can be a little bit of the whoa, watching somebody mac over an ostinato, and instead of it being more like, whoa, okay, and things can start to become anonymous sounding.
Yeah.
You have a coterie of incredible technical musicians who all sound the same.
Yeah.
Where's the drummer today that sounds like, they were inspired by Ed Blackwell or Billy Higgins, instead of just a post Dennis Chambers,
for sure,
who's brilliant, as everybody knows, but or the influx of the Dilla concept from about 10 years ago, or the Chris Dave, another brilliant musician, but then they've got all the Chris Dave
followers,
children.
Yeah.
And do they know that Chris Dave was informed by a lot more than turning a Dilla beat into a,
absolutely,
and it's just, it's like, are you informed? It's like the waves of culture, like the third or second, the reason why, Nirvana was great is because they were connected to the first wave of punk and the first wave of melodic pop music, the Beatles. And you could say they were basically minor threat in the Beatles, or Husker Du and the Beach Boys. And you could see that that's actually what it kind of is. Or with Nirvana, you could see like Cheap Trick is in there.
Yeah.
And you see, the DC hardcore scene, you can see, things like that. You could, and you're like, oh, that's what it is. They're elements. The first circle, because Kurt Cobain wasn't listening to a watered down version of punk, and he wasn't listening to a watered down version of pop music. So then you'd have fast forward. So then what's on top of that? Well, then there's the lightweight Nirvana versions. So I don't want to name names, but we know the bands that came after the second wave. So then you're thinking to yourself, well, what's the wave right now in jazz? And to me, you can always tell when it's people, even we were controversial, but you can hear that we've lived in the world of jazz music. We grew up in the world of creative music. We can sit and talk about eras of jazz and records and the harmony and the rhythm aspects of the whole thing, the cultural aspect of the whole thing.
Oh, yeah.
And where it goes into the culture, and where, the avant-garde is straight ahead, free music, modal jazz of the 60s, bebop, post-bebop, hard bop, swing era music, how it all fed into the 70s and fusion. And then you have the neoclassical movement of the 80s, and you have the avant-garde in New York of the 80s. These are all these things you can see. Today, sometimes I wonder if the only lens for younger musicians is this sort of like sugar splash of a clip on Instagram of somebody macking post-Dennis Chambers over an ostinato. Where is that sort of idiosyncratic personal music that comes from these scenes? It's there. It's most certainly there. But I'm wondering, with the influx of all this information that's available, to me, I'm still waiting for that young musicians who have learned, everything from YouTube.
Yeah.
There's, of course, a couple of amazing younger jazz musicians, Emmanuel Wilkins, people like that who are doing some amazing stuff. And they might have accessed the music through YouTube and something else, not vinyl, OG vinyl era like us. We were like the last OG vinyl era, as kids from the 70s.
Oh, yeah.
And like, but what's that modern sound of somebody that's hearing you watch Don Cherry for 6 minutes on YouTube and then you watch blah, blah, blah. It's like that's an exciting thing to think about in a brain where you can hear so much in one afternoon. You can jump from genre to genre to genre with a click of a button,
for sure.
But then the downside of that is it anonymous? Do you have an attention span?
Yeah.
Is it just about showing off?
Yeah.
Because there are avenues for you to show off.
What's the intention?
Yeah. So in a way it's a unique time,
for sure.
But I think it's a healthy time too, because the audience is growing and
audience is definitely growing. Yeah. Jazz is bigger than ever. It seems.
Exactly.
I love watching you play, and you have this unique sound. And I'm just wondering, this is kind of a strange question, but like, what does it feel like to be you when you're performing? Like, what headspace are you in? Are you just tapped in?
I suppose, like anyone, you feel a certain amount of being tapped into something, and then for me, I've always been interested in not relying on what I know at the forefront, not relying on a riff, not relying on something that I know I can pull off, and having a dramatic element of failure in the rearview mirror is always been an artistic tool for me.
Yeah.
So the dramatic element of, can I pull this off? I don't know. And sometimes I don't.
Yeah.
And so it's more like, well, at least I tried.
Wow.
And I think that's probably a part of what I look at every night is I'm not 100% sure. And that's not false humility. That's real humility. Like I am actually not 100% sure and not 100% sure I can pull it off. And when I have that with me, then I'm like, well, some epiphany could possibly occur for myself and the audience, and a failure could appear, and my ability to deal with that failure, that quote unquote failure, maybe it's a failure within linear time, but within a sort of quantum mechanics version of time, maybe it leads to my ability to command another space because I took the risk to fail.
Right.
And I worked with the failure.
Yeah.
Instead of working and going, oh, I really had an off night. It's like, well, we all have off nights.
What about dealing with the success?
Again, because it's born from a certain vulnerability.
Yeah.
I don't walk away going,
I'm the man.
Yeah. And that's, and you're protected from thinking you are that. And that's important to me I've never, again, this maybe sounds like I'm being like, oh, shucks, but I don't walk away from anything thinking that I've completed the task, or I think of myself as I wake up in the morning and I'm just like, yeah, I think that can be artistically detrimental. I just think the doctrine of maybe, maybe I'll pull it off. Maybe I'm okay at this thing. I must be enough to at least translate the ideas to someone somewhere. Like they were translated to me. My thing is just wanting to continue the tradition of what happened to me, which is I was reached by this music.
Wow.
So if I can be a part of being the baton handing, then that's good enough. That's good enough for me. If I can eat food and take care of my children and do whatever, and I can continue the baton, that's all I could ever ask for from any of it.
That's really cool. What about cover of Modern Drummer though?
I was on the cover of Modern Drummer, and I can't believe that happened. I still think it could be the lowest selling issue.
Come on. People love you, dude. Accept it.
I don't know.
Accept it, Dave.
I don't know, Elmo, but I appreciate
We
it.
love you.
Well,
you're our
a sweet
favorite
man.
drummer,
Yeah,
Dave.
you're our favorite drummer.
Take it.
Yeah, I'm your favorite. Well,
Take it.
I'll take it today.
All right, final question. What's your watch? It looks really cool.
Oh, it's just a swatch, but it's actually from Switzerland. So it's a $60.
It looks awesome.
It's a red one, but it's got the Swiss cross. I'm like, I only buy local, Elmo.
Local organic
So yeah,
watches.
local organics. So I got my swatch at the airport shop in Geneva.
It looks great.
Thank you, buddy.
Well, dude, thank you for being on the
Thank
show.
you. I appreciate it.
Oh my God, Dave King. Give it up.
There again is my largest audience.
One more time, the Bad Plus Complex Emotions.
Thank you.
Oh, no, get it, Dave King. Let's go. Go with Elmo. 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 Go with Elmo.
This is the stuff, man.